Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Inside Update, a show brought to you by InsideInvestigator.org. We're a nonprofit newsroom where we tackle corruption in the state of Connecticut. And the way that we do that is through investigative journalism. I am Connor Dragotis. I'm the managing editor here. And today I'm joined by Mark E. Fitch, senior investigative reporter and the author of our newest investigation. It's called Cash Money. Bridgeport special ed teacher allegedly pocketing students' lunch money. This is one that you may have heard of over this last week. Mark has appeared on several radio interviews. This has been making the rounds on the internet, and it's been getting a lot of people reasonably upset. Mark, how are you today?
I'm hanging in there. It's been a busy week.
I guess busy is good, but obviously I wish it was busy because I don't know, you won the lottery or something, right? Not because you're having to talk about such upsetting topics. I guess that's the job, though. This was a difficult one to read. It was emotional. You talk to people who were really, claim that they were injured. We're going to throw around allegedly's a lot in this episode because obviously, as we'll get into, there's an investigation that is unfolding. But what we do have are people telling their firsthand accounts of what they have experienced. Mark, tell us about what these allegations are and why people are so upset.
Sure. I mean, the allegations, yes, they came from people we spoke with, but they were also formal complaints submitted by school staff to human resources and the head of the special education department and the principal. So, this isn't just people talking. Several people put down on paper in extensive complaints their allegations. And those allegations go something like this. Special education teacher in Bridgeport Central High School has students, some of whom are, quite autistic, nonverbal, who range in age from 14 to 21. Basically, what this teacher was doing was every week he would take the students out into the community, ostensibly to get them experience in interacting and going out into the community and shopping and doing the things that you're going to need to do when you're living on your own. Part of those outings was lunch. And so the teacher would send home a letter to parents saying, send $10 with your child, send, $15, what have you. And he would explain, we're going to this place and then we're going to eat here. So the parents would send in the money. And so $10 per student, about 20 kids in the class, give or take, $200. But no change was ever sent home. And so that's where it starts getting really interesting. Because, one of the things that we had is, or we still have, is a receipt from one of those lunches that took place in Costco. And during this trip, 16 students brought $10 each. The total for lunch was $20, little less. Because, and this is part of the allegations, the teacher bought one large cheese pizza for the group, and then somebody was gluten-free, so I think they ended up getting like a chef salad or something like that. So $20 total, but the parents all say that no money is coming home with their children. So where the rest of it went, nobody knows. And the parents that I spoke with said this is a weekly thing. They're sending in $10 every week. But some of the staff members that I spoke with said, hey, these kids are getting, you go to McDonald's, you're getting a Happy Meal for a teenager. That's not $10, $5, $6, something like that. And, this money is being sent in the form of cash in envelopes. And the teacher is gathering up all these envelopes, buying the lunch for the students. And then, like we said, the money apparently disappears into the ether. In addition to that, the students, some of whom, in their individual education plans are supposed to be paying for their own things and, learning how to have that transaction. they're not being given the opportunity to do that. So it's two violations in different ways. But this is a group of parents, with students who have very special needs, and they don't have a lot of money to be throwing around. So when you start looking at the math on this, mm, doesn't always add up very, very well. There was another instance where, a bunch of students went to, I think it was Comet Pizza, not Comet Pizza, Paradise Pizza. Um, Definitely not Paradise Pizza. And there were, I think he got like 6 pies. It came out to like $86. But if you're assuming, once again, 16 students, where's the other $80 go to? Nobody really knows. And that's the kind of monetary aspect of these allegations, but there were others. That there's no real teaching going on in the classroom, that the students are being left to sit there for long periods of time, that the teacher was ignoring child welfare issues that should have been reported to DCF or DDS. So it was a bit of a list. And yeah, it wasn't a great story to write, but the parents had brought it wasn't just from staff. The parents had brought their concerns to the school, and the school was supposedly conducting an investigation, but the teacher was still in the classroom teaching. That's not normal. That's not how things are normally done. Usually, if you're the subject of an investigation, particularly when it comes to something like this, I mean, you're talking, possible theft, possible, ignoring of child welfare issues, that teacher would be placed on administrative leave. But he wasn't. He was still in the classroom teaching. Now, since our story came out, I understand that has changed. But the school is still not saying anything.
It was really heartening in some ways to see such a fast turnaround, right? This was published on Sunday, and we knew by Monday that this had allegedly moved forward with some kind of removal from the classroom, but also hopefully just some ball rolling here. And I think that was clearly what so many people were upset about, right? Is, their complaints had not been listened to for, this is a month, several months. Like, this is something that had been brought forward. What I don't feel like we got out of this was a reason of why there was this logjam. Clearly, it was something that could be taken care of within 24 hours to get that ball rolling. But for, weeks and weeks and weeks, a couple month, it had not been taken care of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the accused special education teacher and the administration were not communicative with you either. I mean, you did your due diligence to reach out. Just tell me a little bit about what you got, or rather what you didn't get, from those who were supposed to be the adults in the room making decisions and acting for accountability.
Oh, sure. I mean, I sent a number of questions to the principal of the school, the deputy, I think it was the deputy director of human resources, and the head of special education in the school, because that's who the formal complaints were sent to. And so I figure if anybody would know what's going on or be able to address some of these issues, they should be well aware of them. It would be them. And then, I sent the allegations that were laid out in those complaints to the teacher and said, hey, what do you have a response? Do you want to say something? Like, this is what I am being told. This is what I am reading. I heard nothing from either. Despite, I sent those emails twice, being like, hey, this is coming. This story is going to be published. I mean, if you can't see that coming, as to how that's going to be received, you probably shouldn't be running a school.
Well, you'd think that the goal there would be to protect those you are charged with, being responsible for. And one of the things that I appreciated about the way this story unfolded was we obviously got one tip, and, there were very serious allegations. And, of course, you being an excellent reporter and us being dedicated to making sure we get our facts right, there was this initial, not gray area, but we really felt the burden to say, we better get this right. And so, you started this outreach, started talking to other people. And the accusations that came back were time and time and time again the same. The
Yes.
consistency was uniquely of a high bar. Sometimes we get like, oh, I don't quite remember this. No, it was written down, which is always beautiful. But also, when you spoke to people, I felt like we were getting the same story every
Mhm.
single time, which gave me a lot of faith. Also broke my heart a little bit, reading that this is, I think when we get a tip like that, my first hope truly in my heart is that it's an absolute lie so that this kind of horrible thing isn't happening. But then I was just so glad to know that, okay, it's in Mark's hands. He's going to put out a good piece. He's going to have this information out there. What was it like doing those interviews, collecting this, the process of bringing this into reality? I mean, you agree, presumably, with my assessment that it was uniquely consistent across the board?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was consistent across the board. I talked to a lot of staff members and I talked to several parents. It was all the same. Uh, the thing is, even if I had the verbal complaints, I don't think we could have moved forward without the formal written complaints that were sent to the
Mm.
school, where somebody's willing to put their name on it and say like this is what's happening. And also, I received emails, supposedly confirming that there is an active investigation. I was told by several people that the Board of Education in Bridgeport was aware of this. So, these are things, where that I was looking for. Because people could come out and say all sorts of stuff. But I wanted it in writing. I wanted something I could, point to and be like, this is a quote from somebody with knowledge of this going on. And I was able to speak with the parents, and honestly, these are all just wonderful people. Like I was really taken with how much not only the parents, like the parents would look out for each other. They would send in extra money for the kids who couldn't afford it, or didn't have, their parents didn't send them with money for whatever reason. They would send in extra money to cover those kids. And the staff members would take out of their own pocket to try to make sure the kids, didn't feel like they were being left out of these lunches and things like that. So, a lot of that I couldn't put in. There was a lot of fear of retaliation, which, I mean, few things piss me off. Like stealing pisses me off. Uh, People worried about being retaliated against by their employer for bringing forward things that they should be concerned about, for trying to do the right thing, pisses me off. And that was a big concern when all these accusations started coming to me, and I started speaking with everybody. Is everybody was terrified of losing their job or something like that for doing the right thing. Now, had the school reacted in a way where these people felt like something was being done, that it was being addressed, that their concerns were being heard, this probably wouldn't even gotten to us.
Right.
But that wasn't done. And not only that, the very people who were trying to, bring these concerns out, were worried, that this could fall back on them somehow. And that pisses me off. And I said to them, I said, if that happens, please tell me, because it's going to happen out in front of everybody, and I will I would just write more stories,
Yeah.
um, because
I
that's
mean,
not okay.
the public pressure clearly works, right? As we said, the ball got rolling real quick after this story was published, because of I'd call it an outcry. Like, people were genuinely and justifiably upset to read about what was going on. And again, we still have not heard communication from those who were supposed to be dealing with the problem in the first place. It's beautiful that we exist to serve this purpose, right? We want to make sure that these people are going to stand, are going to have the support they need. These stories should not die in darkness. But it's, very much, we joke about this internally, but there is nothing that would make me happier than working my way out of a job. Like, let's get rid of the corruption and go on and do other things. I have gardening to do. It's springtime. Like, let's get my hands in the dirt instead of getting my hands in this dirt in the state of Connecticut. We don't always know why people don't act. And this is separate from this story individually. I'm curious, just through your extensive experience in Connecticut, because we hear this a lot. I'm afraid of retaliation. I'm afraid of people in power coming back and they're going to harm me. I mean, that also may be happening upstream here. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that if the leader of the special education department or the principal or members of the board of education, there is I'll describe it as what I have observed to be a cultural problem where, we need more heroes in Connecticut. We need more courage in Connecticut to do the right thing, because I do genuinely believe, especially when we talk to people at all levels of government, private companies, people who are dealing with, corruption in their neighborhoods, people generally understand that theft and violence are wrong, that corruption is something, and they can identify it very clearly. 99% of the time, people know this is a corrupt act. What I'm experiencing is corrupt, or I'm involved with something that's corrupt, but they don't do anything. And obviously we just kind of put forward information, and I continue to be impressed with those who step up. And I'm not even sure if there's a question here, but this observation does keep coming up, and it is vital to the mission of rooting out corruption and to helping Connecticut thrive, the people in Connecticut live better lives, that culture does start to change. I guess, do you see your job, obviously bringing this stuff forward? I think you give people that fire in their belly to bring about positive change. I know, that's not necessarily why you're a reporter. Your job is to put out just solid information and, to a certain extent, let the chips fall where they may. But, as you put it, this is upsetting stuff, right? I mean, it has to feel emotionally draining at some point.
Well, there's a couple things you touched on there is, why do people not react to the people who should be reacting? Why do they not react? Mm-hmm. And I've discussed this before. I think it has to do with the whole "we can't hurt our brand" type concern that we see so much because of social media and things like that. It's like, we can't, our brand has to be pristine.
In all fairness, I'm not sure that applies to the Bridgeport school district in terms of having a sterling brand, but
you beat me to it, but it's not necessarily in their case having a sterling brand. It's that their special education system was already under a ton of pressure from the state. The state had essentially come in and not taken over, but partnered with with the Bridgeport special education system to fix a number of problems that had been pointed out through numerous complaints going back 10 years, big systemic complaints filed against the Bridgeport public school system. And so obviously, they were working hard to try to get things up to snuff and probably didn't want to have this hanging over their heads. So there was some, there might have been some brand management in there, or at least let's not, dig ourselves deeper. The other thing with, people worried about retaliation, I mean, this is why we guard our sources so closely. I mean, if you'll notice, I haven't mentioned a single source yet by name. And I'm not going to, even though some of them have granted interviews to, television news stations, which, News Channel 12 started, picked up our coverage and started, talking to people at the school and parents and things like that, which is great because it gets more attention. And that's fine if those sources want to identify themselves there. They told me they didn't want to be identified. I confirmed who they were, that they would have experience in this, and that they were, that they were individuals who would have knowledge, and that's fine. They stay secret with me. And that, we're an investigative news outlet. I tell people who come to me who are nervous, I say, listen, usually 80, 90% of the people I talk to for a story aren't in the story, because it's not about them. Obviously them coming forward to us, in my mind, makes them heroes. They're the ones doing the hard work. I'm just writing it down. They're the ones, they're the ones that are actually risking something and coming forward. And that's why they're worried. They shouldn't be worried, but they are. And so to me, okay, yeah, it's not, come forward. I appreciate that. And good on you for doing it. I will protect my sources. I won't give them up. And at the same time, it's like, it's also not about them. It's about finding what the problem is and getting the problem fixed. And sometimes to get the problem fixed, if it's not being addressed in, through the normal institutional channels that it should be done, you have to go public and you have to take it to someplace like us, where we're going to talk to everybody and we're going to take a look at the situation, make our best judgment. Um, you know, I always tell people, I don't do fixes. Like, I don't know what the right fix is for something, but I know something. I know when something is wrong when I see it. You know,
Yeah.
so it's up to everybody else, to the people who are in charge, to fix their problems. But if they're not going to address them, I have no problem pointing them out.
That's fantastic. And well, you also bring up something that is interesting. I think a lot of people don't always think about when they are going through something, is that they might not be the only person, right? I
Mm.
can imagine that some of these families were sitting there saying, oh my God, I'm losing the money that could be going towards something else for my, nonverbal special needs child, right? Those are not easy things. All of a sudden, if you realize this is happening to an entire classroom, you have people, you have support. I mean, I think you did, and you can also play that role, as a newsroom, is saying, people reach out all the time. Probate comes to mind, guardians and conservators, family court corruption, attorneys. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on of things where all of a sudden I'm saying, hey, you are the 15th person to reach out to us about this. Do you
Yeah.
want to make some friends? Like, do you want to, like, we can actually help connect things. And like this, it can come together through many, many people. All of a sudden, you have a really powerful investigative story that paints a more comprehensive picture and actually
Mhm.
lifts people up to accomplish that goal. You do not need to stand alone if you are experiencing corruption. And, if we can be bridge builders, there are a number of cases where we've been able to get problems fixed just by sending an inquiry email or, connecting a few folks. Those are wins. They don't make the front page or anything, but we still love to help people in those ways.
Well, one of the parents I talked to for this story, she was like, "Yeah, I sent in the $10. I thought it was for the whole trip, or it's kind of
Yeah.
like, even as a parent myself, like if they're like, hey, field trip, $10 for lunch, okay." I mean, and when it becomes every week, it just becomes kind of habit, and you just assume that the things are being done up to snuff. Um, in this case, it doesn't appear that they were, because if I sent my kid with $10 to go buy lunch, yeah, I would expect that it would come back in some form, even if he kept it, it'd be fine, it'd be
Yeah.
fine by me. But when somebody else is keeping it, it's a different story. And it's like, this wasn't going to pay for gas. It wasn't, there weren't extra goodies being, doled out. In fact, there were, some of these field trips, as I've pointed out in some of these other radio interviews, and was pointed out in these formal complaints that were sent. It's questionable what good those trips were doing. In that the kids went to IKEA, which would bore the life out of me. And they're not there to buy furniture. They're walking through the place and then going to get lunch, and apparently a lunch that costs less than $10. The students going to Barnes and Noble, they don't have money to buy books or any of the things that Barnes and Noble sells, so they just kind of hang out there for a while. So and become frustrated because to some extent these are special needs kids, and some of them are mentally younger than their age, and you put a kid in a toy store and tell them he can't get anything, and they get frustrated. So yeah, there's a lot of, I think those parents didn't realize, it's kind of like they kind of put it out of their minds, like, all right, $10, all right, $10, and $10 is what it's supposed to be. And
Sure.
not getting it, like she described it, she's like, it didn't click for me until I sent in $100, so the kids could have this Super Bowl pizza party. And the bill came to $76 and the teacher tipped 20, and she was like, well, hold on a second, like, why are you using, like, at least run it by me before you give
Yeah.
away $20 of my money. And then it kind of started clicking for her, be like, well, hold on a second, where's all the rest of this money going? And as the parents started talking, this kind of pattern emerged, and that's when complaints started being filed.
We're down to just the last few minutes of this episode. We try to keep it to half an hour here because this does, though it is live streamed every other Thursday, it also appears on radio stations across the state. We want to, or I want to point out here that yes, it was the money thing, but there were other allegations made here. You're going to want to read about the way that bingo prizes were handled, folks. When you start reading this investigation on insideinvestigator.org, you're going to want to read about how the way that IEPs were allegedly being handled, the way that students were or were not being rewarded for their community service work, and the way that some of these carrots and sticks were being used. There is, obviously the headline, and I think part of the eye-catching thing, right? I always feel a little skeevy about, we have to pick and choose what to lead with in a story. But there is a lot to go down a couple levels here and understand. Mark, is there anything that you want to highlight to just of course, further encourage people to read the story, but anything else that folks just listening who, hopefully in their car may not be able to pull up the website right now? What else do people need to know before we wrap up?
One of the things that was, repeatedly outlined in some of the complaints was that this teacher was kind of dismissing these students' ability to learn. And one of the parents I spoke with, she basically told me that her daughter had been brushed off as like, oh, well, she can't learn that stuff. But when she's getting after school tutoring, she is learning and she is progressing. And so and this is kind of a positive thing that I pulled away from all this, is that the staff members working with this student population really believe in them and really believe in their ability to be educated and get out into the community and have, fulfilling lives, even if those fulfilling lives need some form of support into adulthood, that's fine. But they really believed in these students' ability to, be educated, do the work, and mature in their educational abilities. And it seemed like that was kind of being ignored and brushed under the rug. So, we'll see, going forward, obviously hope for all the best for these families. And I hope all their students, their respective students do well and, can move forward with their lives.
I love that positivity. And yeah, it's true. Let's end the theft, alleged. Let's get rid of any instances of lesser education results for kids. I mean, holy cow, that's such a low bar, right? Let's make sure that kids are getting what they need educationally. And heck, if we can play a role in doing that by just shining a light on alleged wrongdoing, we're in a good place. Mark, huge thank you for putting together this investigation, for all of the work that you do day in and day out to chase down bad behavior and bring it to light. Folks, if you are out there, please head over to insideinvestigator.org. Read Mark's newest investigation. Again, it's called Cash Money. Bridgeport special ed teacher allegedly pocketing students' lunch money. We have more than 2,100 articles that we have published on insideinvestigator.org, many of them with just as astonishing accusations. And also very important, there are a lot of happy stories of things going right on insideinvestigator.org, things that have been fixed as a result of these hardworking reporters' work. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And until then, please don't be corrupt.